Good afternoon and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Adam and I's new 3 in 30. So each month going forward, we're going to be tackling one topic in 30 minutes with actionable advice, keeping it short and sweet so you can get on with your day. And we're going to be looking at three specific things within that topic because we've got a big thing on max of three. We don't want to concentrate on too many things or try to do too many. So, Adam, welcome to episode 1.
Hello, Kate, and hello, everybody. And that's exactly it. What we're looking to do is make this really simple, really actionable, and just talk through some of the things that we've learned as we've been training financial planners all over the world in terms of how to make the most of video. But of course, we didn't start off knowing a huge amount about video ourselves. So we've been learning as we've gone along as well. And so we thought it was about time we started to share some tips, didn't we, Kate?
Yeah, absolutely. And even though what are we, exactly a year into the pandemic and lockdowns now, one of these, a few of these topics actually really hit home for me. So today we're talking about 3 ways to level up your video meetings, your virtual meetings. So whether you're doing video content, you want to make some improvements, or just make sure that you're being clearly understood by your clients or in virtual presentations. And it was fascinating. I was watching CNBC, which I don't normally do, but it was during the whole GameStop Reddit situation. And I was fascinated with how many people they had on that are like multimillionaires, very wealthy people. And they had no eye contact. They were looking off somewhere. They had terrible lighting. Their sound was like they were in an echo chamber. I was like, all right, we still got a little bit of work to do, but thankfully, and this is what we're chatting about today, really easy steps to get really big improvement.
That's exactly right. So why don't we start off then, Kate? And the first thing on our list today is eye contact, isn't it? So
Yes.
eye contact is one of those really tricky things for people to get used to, particularly when we're using the sort of equipment that you might have around. So you may be having a webcam and you may be using possibly a mobile phone, but ultimately knowing where the camera is and knowing where to look is the first difficult step. But then, of course, we've got the other aspect that what you want to do is obviously engage with the other person if it's a one-to-one and a live conversation. So
Yeah.
we quite often find ourselves staring at the tops of people's heads as they look down at their screen rather than actually having a conversation. And how have you found that over the time that you've been getting used to using Zoom and other virtual meeting devices, Kate?
Yeah, everyone has, and it is interesting to see. And I'm still quite fascinated with the people that created the laptops where the camera is in the like lower left portion, so that instead of looking at the top of the heads, we're maybe looking up people's nostrils, which really makes for some interesting discussion points.
It does. We've seen some interesting angles of people. And the other thing, of course, that we tend to forget, and you'll have seen it if you've seen any sort of Zoom or Teams meeting, is we tend to forget our resting listening faces. And when we're in a real meeting with somebody face to face, we wouldn't ever dream of scowling and staring down to the bottom left. We'd be engaging with people. But again, through Zoom and Teams, we tend to forget that. So there are some great ways of improving your eye contact. And of course, you may have tried some of these already. The first is to take the screen, minimize it, and put it as close to your laptop camera as possible, so that you effectively, when you're looking at the camera, you're looking at the other person. But there, of course, there are some challenges with that, aren't there, Kate?
There are. And one of the things, I had a meeting with someone recently who was in a big office, and it was a very cool background. And really, it was kind of like their head was way down here showing everything. And so it made it hard. And I was even thinking about that. Even if I minimized it, I'm still looking down. And then I wouldn't actually be able to see their expressions or their face. And when we're talking about financial planning and very personal, emotional matters, sometimes you really want to make sure that you are able to see exactly what that person is feeling, because we know that so much of communication is nonverbal.
Absolutely. And the other thing that we'll have noticed is that it's exhausting as well. Trying to make eye contact with something that is inanimate and have a conversation with somebody, even if we're just staring at the screen, we don't get the feedback that we would get in a normal conversation. And
Yep.
so it's difficult to do many meetings one after the other because of what people are now calling Zoom fatigue. But I think we've found a way around that, haven't we?
You have, Adam. I will give you all the credit for this because you you are the one who went out and made a few more expensive purchases to test different things. And this is one of the things I love about what we're always trying to do is actually find what are easy to implement and, inexpensive or very reasonably priced items to get maximum ROI.
Absolutely. I've got a room in the house that is full now. It's like a graveyard of technology trials of things, Kate, that actually didn't work out, and very expensively at times didn't work out. But we've actually come up with a solution that is incredibly cost effective, and we're both using it now, and that is a teleprompter. And these things have been around for a long time and are often used for scripting, and so for people to make eye contact with the camera in scripting. But when you pair a teleprompter with a mobile phone, any sort of smartphone that can actually then mirror the screen of your laptop, then you can have the person on screen in the teleprompter, which is directly in front of the camera. And that means that you can make eye contact and have a real conversation with that person.
And so this is actually what it looks like in practice. You can see I've got my laptop down here, and then the teleprompter, which is again only 70 US dollars, is connected to a separate camera up here. And then I just have, it's actually an old iPhone that's so worthless, Apple won't even recycle it. So this works perfectly. It just stays plugged in all day. And then I just stare directly at Adam there in the screen, and I'm making perfect eye contact. And Adam has the exact same setup on his side as well.
Absolutely. And we both use DLSR or mirrorless cameras, Kate, don't we? But if you're using your laptop camera, then what you can do is you can go for a slightly different type of teleprompter, like this one here. And this is just a really simple one that slots over your laptop, and it's padded so it protects a laptop screen. But then essentially the part that you look through, if I stare through there, that part that actually the camera looks through goes over your laptop camera. And this is a thing called a little prompter, and it's a little more expensive than the version that we use, but it's nice and portable, and you can take that away and use with your laptop camera as well.
And the nice thing is it's got nice little bumpers because I was initially worried about would it scratch the screen or, do anything to mess up the pixels, but it's got really nice cushions on the back to make sure it's not damaging your computer or laptop at all.
Absolutely. So perfect eye contact every time and a lot less Zoom fatigue.
Yes, absolutely. So that's our main recommendation there. And I was thinking this morning even about, when people remodel offices and how much money they put into, furniture and chairs. My goodness, like ergonomic, nice chairs can be so expensive and artwork. And, we're going to be working virtually for a long time. There are a lot of people that don't ever want to go back to in person or are going to be doing a bit of hybrid of both. So when we're looking at these things in the grand scheme of things, they really are very inexpensive upgrades that you're going to be able to use time and time again. And yeah, I can testify it's so much nicer just being able to look directly forward. And the other really nice thing is it keeps my posture good. Because you'll notice when I showed you, the camera is up there at eye level. So I'm also not slumping over. And Adam, that's one of the things we've seen in meetings is you can, when you're sitting at your desk and get a bit slumpy and, start to kind of fall apart a little bit. So this helps keep you upright and energetic.
Absolutely. And we should probably point out, Kate, that we aren't being sponsored in any way by the amazingly named AMBITFUL teleprompter company. Who knows who came up with that name? But it was the cheapest one that I found on Amazon. So, we thought, well, let's give those a go. And they work perfectly fine, don't they?
Yep. Yeah, it does. And just because we also get the question, so we use an app called Duet for having it mirror onto our iPhones, and that's free, I believe.
I think in the UK it was £9, but it may
Okay.
well be free in the United States.
Or I may have purchased it years ago and it was still on there, but nice inexpensive option.
But yeah, and
So
that's the whole point, is that so many of these things are, really inexpensive, aren't they? And it just makes such a difference. It's one of those things that I saw on social media a few weeks ago. A couple of financial planners were exchanging conversation about the maximum number of meetings they could do on Zoom in a day, and I think the general consensus was 2.5. And that was when Zoom fatigue kicked in. And it's not in any way a competition, but I'm quite comfortable going 8, 9, 10. I did 17 one day a couple of weeks back using this format, and you can just sit comfortably and chat away like you're just having a normal conversation.
yeah. And that's interesting to say 2.5. I also, just as a slight aside, want to point out that Harvard study that recently came out that said 98% of people actually wish conversations ended a little bit sooner than they do. So as we think about meetings and virtual meetings, and that's a big reason why we made this 3 in 30, because 30 minutes is a nice short period of time to get actionable advice. And I've always been a big advocate in financial planning because we're dealing with such intense topics and sharing information with clients that can be overwhelming, that oftentimes shorter meetings works better for all parties for a number of reasons.
Absolutely. And that's a perfect segue then into segment 2 for us today, which is sound.
And making sure that people can hear you. And again, going back to thinking about what we would do when we're in person. So if you're in a meeting and in a conference room, and I've actually got roofers here today, they are ripping off the roof and they're going to be banging away and putting the new roof on tomorrow. But if you had that situation, you might try to go to a more quiet place or make sure that that disruption isn't interrupting your meeting. Because again, we're dealing with very intense things, and every meeting you have is incredibly important. So making sure that you're eliminating as many distractions as possible. So we have got one really, really great thing that we recommend. And again, we're not being sponsored by any of these companies, though if they're listening and they would like to sponsor us, feel free to get in touch. So
But this one,
Adam,
yeah, this one is remarkable, Kate, isn't it? Because this is the single. If anybody watching doesn't do anything other than go and get Crisp, Crisp is a fantastic app. And what it does, it cuts out background noise. Kate, you have purposely lined up the roofers today during this live
oh yeah,
broadcast, just so that they can be making huge amounts of noise in the background, so you can demonstrate how brilliant this app is. But you can sit in a coffee shop. Back in the olden times when we used to, I found it worked there. You can sit in the garden, you can be next to the road, you can be anywhere, and Crisp will take out all of that background noise. Now, apps like Zoom have noise cancelling software now, but Crisp just tidies it up one whole stage further. And that makes such a massive difference.
it does. And they've been upgrading it. So I think it was just 2 days ago, we got another email with a bunch of improvements that Crisp has been making. And one of them is eliminating echo. And that's a challenge that we find a lot. And people that use just the speakers in their computer often don't realize that there is a lot of echo that comes with it, especially if you're in, a big empty room, or, a lot of people have makeshift offices. So you could be in a big kitchen or dining room where there's just a lot of space in there for noise to echo around. So having Crisp for that now also helps eliminate that echo and clean up that sound, as you mentioned. And again, wildly inexpensive. I think it's $5 a month, so it's $60 a year. So right next to Calendly, I would actually say this is an equivalent, highly valuable investment to make for your business.
That's absolutely right. And I think it's really interesting, the impact that poor sound quality has on your interactions. People will tolerate more not a very good picture. If the
Yep.
picture's fuzzy, even if it's slightly glitchy, people will tolerate that because we can still hear the message. And that's why the telephone works so well, doesn't it? That ultimately we can't see the other person when we're using the telephone, but we still get the message, and we're happy with that. But when we're looking at video and when we're looking at interacting with clients, particularly live, poor sound quality is something that it's just distracting. And it's distracting at exactly the wrong time. You don't want the other person focusing on your poor sound quality. You want them focusing on what you're talking about.
Yep. Yeah. So in addition to downloading Crisp, and even if all you have is your computer speakers, but really everyone else has other speakers. And so at the very least, highly recommend that you use just your simple Apple headphones, or I'm sure Android has headphones, and plug these in, because even just using these will help to cut out a lot of that echo and the sound becomes more crisp. And one of the things that people don't always realize is that when you're using the computer speakers, then one of the reasons it echoes is because then the sound is also coming out of the speakers and getting picked up and kind of going in a circle.
Yeah, that latency can be a real problem. And so, just minimizing that as much as possible. But also, when you're using those types of headphones, just watch whether or not the microphone is scratching against any clothing or anything like that, because that can have a huge impact. And you don't realize that's happening because you can't hear that back. But the other person will hear that scratching and they might not always tell you. Now, our friends, we'd think they would tell us, but actually, if you're meeting someone for the first time, they may just go with it, but it's really distracting.
Yeah, absolutely. So it happens a lot on shirt collars because the way it hangs down, the microphone will rub right against a shirt collar, and hair. And that's another one. Even individual strands of hair can go across and it sounds very staticky. And I actually see this surprisingly often in virtual conferences. So when presenters are presenting and not realizing that that's happening. So that's one thing to keep in mind, and maybe a benefit of something like AirPods.
Absolutely. And then moving up a notch through various different types of microphones, there are all sorts of different microphones that we can use. So there are very typical USB microphones that will plug straight into your laptop or PC. Many blogging type vlogging type microphones as well. Podcast microphones will be there to, at very low cost, right the way through to a couple of £100 or a couple of $100. But again, oftentimes people will buy, but not read the instructions. So many of these things are marketed as plug and play, but they still have instructions. Many people have seen a Blue Yeti microphone, and I went with a Blue Yeti microphone a while back, and I plugged it in, fully expecting it to work, Kate. And I recorded something, and I went, it was possibly the best thing I've ever recorded straight out of the box live. I went for 15 minutes talking fluently, which you and I both know is not something I do that often. And I got to the end and I went to playback and I was so pleased because I thought the sound is going to be amazing and I talked brilliantly and this is just one of the best things I've done in a long time. And there was no sound. And at the back of that particular microphone, there's a little direction knob which actually decides the direction of the sound that it's going to pick up. And it was facing away from me. Now you can't tell because it looks the same on both sides unless you read the instructions. And we use a lot of this equipment, particularly the more complex equipment, without ever really getting into the instructions and learning properly how to use it. So I would definitely recommend, through personal experience, read the instructions of anything you buy and use it to its best capability.
So it's almost thinking about it like a reverse loudspeaker. So you mentioned it was kind of going backwards. So if you're standing in a crowd and somebody has a loudspeaker, but they're doing it with their back to you, you're not going to hear that message. So it's the
Absolutely, yeah.
reverse with a microphone, thinking about it.
That sound pattern's really important, Kate. Absolutely. And the other thing that I think is important as well is just understanding, we can have all sorts of great microphones, but understanding how to use a microphone and where you need to be sat and positioning to the microphone as well. And if I just show you where I am, around about 6 inches, it looks a little longer because of the focal length here, but around about 6 inches away from the microphone is just about right. Any closer and the noise and the sound gets a little bit echoey and tinny. Any further away and we begin to just sort of fade into the background. And microphones can be incredibly sensitive. This one that I've got really is. And so taking time, even if you just get somebody else, to connect with you and just do some practice and just work out where that key point where you should be sitting is best for the microphone. And that will give you then consistent quality every time. And keeping it just out of shot is nice, but if actually your sound quality is in any way going to be improved by just moving it into shot, people understand that we use microphones. Ultimately, deep down, we all know that I can't be talking to you in Florida right now from here in England without using a microphone. So pretending that there isn't one isn't that necessary, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, some people look pretty darn cool. You can work it into the overall look and feel, and it can give that slightly more professional, it's got a kind of a cool guy look to it.
Absolutely. Although people can get a bit competitive as well. I've seen some proper sound rigs recently,
That's true.
and people can go a little over the board sometimes.
Yes. So thinking about rounding out, what are the main three things to think about when you're leveling up your virtual meetings? And we've talked about eye contact being super important, just as it is when we're in person. Sound being super important. Again, when we're in person, you want to make sure the other person can hear you. And the last thing is looking at lighting.
Absolutely. And this is one of the trickiest things to get right, I think, is, particularly if you're in somewhere or in a building where you don't have great natural light. Now you've got great natural light there, Kate, but we know that you've got studio lights as well. But getting the light right takes time, and it takes experimentation. It takes actually walking around the room and spending time thinking about how the light interplays with the video. But then of course it changes all the time, because unless you're in a closed room with no windows, then the natural light is going to change. So lighting can be really tricky.
It can be, but that's a great exercise that we recommend people do in our video creation masterclass is actually pick up your laptop with the video on and walk around your house and walk around different angles and point it up and point it down. And once you start to notice a little bit of the effects of lighting, and it even changes your face. In good lighting, you can look 10 years younger sometimes. It can change the tone of your face. It can make it so that your expressions come across in a different way. So even if it's a place in your house you know you're not going to be doing meetings, just doing that exercise helps you be more aware of the effects of lighting.
That's absolutely right. And you've got some great, really inexpensive lighting there, Kate. So why don't you tell us a bit about that?
I do. I have a few different things. So one of them is something that I keep seeing at it feels like every store I've been going to lately, and that's just a very simple ring light. And so this works great. It can be right on the other side of the computer if I wanted to. You mentioned I have studio lights around, so I don't use it for that, but it can work great going around the teleprompter so that it's coming in nice and clear. And it just plugs right into USB so it stays charged at all times. And the nice thing is it's got different color temperatures. So depending on your skin tone, the time of day, the lighting that you have around you, and you can make it brighter or darker depending on the light fill that you need. So these are really popular options that are, as we said, really inexpensive. And here, if you wanted to do any meetings on your iPhone or your smartphone or any videos, it fits in nicely there so that you are perfectly illuminated. And the other thing that I've been playing around with lately that I really enjoy is just this tiny little thing. So you can actually just search lots of different options for video conference lighting, and it plugs in as well. It doesn't have to, but this keeps it going if you've got back-to-back meetings, and it's surprisingly bright. So on dim, if that's what you need, or you can make it even brighter. I have so many studio lights around that you can't necessarily see, but you can see how bright it can get. And again, it's got the different color temperatures for your skin tone and whatnot. And the great thing about this is it's got this little attachment here. So it can actually just attach right onto the corner of your laptop. So it just sits there, provides some nice additional light, different color temperatures. And again, another inexpensive, super easy option. And this makes it also really nice for people that maybe have to or want to move around to different locations throughout the day. Even if you're in an office, you might go to a conference room or to a different meeting room, sitting at your desk, or at home being in different places. So you can just carry it with you. It doesn't weigh anything or take up any space.
That's exactly it. And I have to admit to being quite jealous. When you first bought that little light, Kate, I was amazed at how great it was for such a tiny amount of money. And of course, I can't use those types of lights because I wear glasses. And it is a real challenge to get any sort of balance of your lighting if you wear glasses. And the trick to it, to at least, it's always a compromise. But the trick to light your face if you're wearing glasses is to take whatever lights you've got and put them high up. So my two studio lights at the moment, I've got a backlight, but then I've got two main studio lights. And they are just high enough right now that actually you can't see the flare on my lenses. If I just tilt my head slightly, you can straight away see the flare. And so I spend quite a lot of time, depending on how I'm going to sit when I'm presenting, or if I'm meeting with somebody. I'll spend time just playing around with the lighting for a couple of minutes beforehand, just to make sure, thinking about the natural light, thinking about the flare on the lenses, that actually I've got them just at that height that takes the flare away. Now, of course, I've got quite thick rimmed glasses as well, so it's going to create shadows, whatever we do. You can, if you really want to try and take some of the shadows off your face and you wear glasses, then think about a reflector as well. If you put something bright in front of you and just below, that will reflect the light up and it will just eliminate a few more of those shadows. I don't have a huge amount of space here. I've played around with reflectors to try and do that, but it means I can't type because it's over the top of the laptop. So I just go with it as a bit of a compromise, but better than actually if I had that big flare. But it does mean that if you wear specs like me, then you can't use those forward-facing lights as easily, because effectively your eyes are just obscured with the flare.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point, Adam. And I admit something I don't often think of since I don't wear glasses. But
I've
uh,
got to say, Kate, I used to absolutely adore wearing glasses until I started getting more involved with video, and then it's just a big old problem. It would almost drive me to contact lenses, as I'm really honest.
Oh, all right. We'll keep an eye on that and see if you actually make that jump. But it's good that there is a solution, and that's a pretty easy one. And even those studio lights you're talking about, you can get those. You can get a set of 3 on Amazon for like $60. So all of this together, even if you purchased everything we were talking about, which you don't have to, but even if you did, we're only looking at what, $200 to $300, which is less than a lot of people spend on an office chair.
That's exactly it. And I think that sometimes when we're thinking about budgets, we will sort of think all this type of equipment is expensive, and you can make some expensive mistakes. So it
Yeah.
is important. You can check out lots of reviews on the internet. Obviously, we've been through some things here that we found have really worked for us, but do some research as well. Think about what you want to achieve, and think about doing that cost effectively, because you don't need to spend a lot of money.
No, no, you don't. And Adam, what about people that do want to not only level up their virtual meeting game, but start to incorporate video in their business a bit more? And if you've got all these great tools and sound and lighting, and you can, have a nice eye contact with the camera, how can people learn more about leveling up their video?
Oh, that's a great question, Kate. I think the start point would be to join our video creation masterclass. I know that sounds like a bit of a plug, but ultimately, the one thing that we found, haven't we, is that it doesn't matter what equipment people have got, and you can have all the gear, but actually the confidence and just starting the process of getting used to seeing your face on camera and hearing your voice. The voice is the worst thing for most people who are new to producing their own video for marketing purposes, or even just engaging with people on something that's going to be recorded. Our own voice tends to frighten us, and because it's not what we expect to hear. In my
Yeah.
head I sound amazing. On video I sound like some strange northern Englishman, and that in itself is something that you can only get past with practice. But we create an environment where actually people get to practice together in an environment that's incredibly supportive, with some really simple ideas and really simple techniques, where you're regularly producing just a 1 minute or 90-second video covering a particular topic, looking at a particular discipline in terms of how to produce video content. And it's just been a joy to deliver, hasn't it, Kate?
It's been so much fun. And honestly, we have seen some amazing videos done with just natural light outside with smartphones. And this continues to amaze me because I got a degree in photography, and seeing the quality of video that comes through on smartphones these days like blows my college kids' mind. It's so great. So there are still tons of things you can do that don't involve, adding any additional equipment, but seeing people that were so nervous in the beginning, and then after just sharing their first video within the community, like I said, it's that safe environment. You're practicing with financial planners from all over the world who are in the exact same boat as you, and then saying, All right, I've got my first video uploaded. You've opened the floodgates. You're going to get a lot more video content from me because it's like trying any new hobby or sport or activity. The hardest part is getting started. But as you mentioned, it's every Friday or over the weekend, depending on your schedule, just uploading a 60 to 90-second video, which is a great way to build a habit. We know that you need that consistency and that repetition. So we take it nice and slow over the 3 months. So in April, we're focusing the entire month on just how do you create valuable, engaging content, keeping it short and sweet, looking at specific examples each week. And then in May, we're going to be looking at that comfort. Just how do you get comfortable? How do you make sure you come off naturally and don't look like you're being held hostage on camera? And then in June, we go through all the technical bits and diving deeper into a lot of the things we talked about today, like the lighting and the sound and editing. So taking it nice and slow, because that's also how you build habits. Don't try to do everything at once. Build up over time and keep that consistent practice.
Absolutely, Kate. And you mentioning people looking comfortable on camera, you've probably just helped me define our key strapline for the Video Creation Masterclass, which is join the Video Creation Masterclass and learn to blink. Because
Learn
that's
to
one
blink.
thing that people often do, don't they? They freeze on camera and people forget to blink. So if nothing else, come and join us for 3 months and we will teach you how to blink comfortably on camera.
Yes, and that might replace, we had another strapline we were thinking about recently based on feedback from one of our current masterclass participants, which is that the masterclass helps reduce barfiness. So if the idea of being on video and sharing video content makes you want to barf, we can assure you this masterclass helps reduce barfiness.
Excellent. I think that's a perfect place to leave that today then, Kate, and look forward to next month.
Yes, fantastic. And we'll be posting what the topic is going to be on that, and we'll set the date for that in the next couple of weeks. So make sure you follow both Adam and I on LinkedIn. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Kate. See everybody soon.